Here's how you can get insurance for your camper van so you know that you're covered in case of an accident. I know I'm glad I had insurance on my van here that I live out of full time. Otherwise, I would have been stuck paying over 25 grand for an accident that left my van looking like this. Insurance may not be the sexiest topic in all of van life, but it's a definite necessity to know and have in your van, so that way you can know that you're going to be safe in case of an accident or theft, and it just gives you a whole bunch of peace of mind while you're on the road traveling and doing your adventures. Now, historically, it's actually been pretty difficult to get a camper van insured without being dropped or having insanely high rates. And the reason for this is because there's not really much standards in the insurance industry for camper vans, or at least there hasn't been. Unlike in the automotive industry where every vehicle is basically the same or there's set standards for makes and models, for camper van build-outs, they're all different, so there's not really any standard way to insure them. Which means each policy needs a decent amount of customization for everything included in the van, what you have in the build, are you gonna be full-time or part-time living out of the van, things like that. Also, if it's a DIY build that you built yourself, then the insurance company has no idea how good you are at actually building out vans and if they can trust the quality of your work. So they're taking on all the liability and the responsibility in case of an accident. So that's why in the past it's been pretty difficult to get insurance for your DIY camper van or even a professional build out camper van. But nowadays there are a few companies that are willing to insure camper vans and van build outs, even if it is DIY. The three main companies that either I've used or I have van life friends who use are Roamly, Progressive, and State Farm. But before I talk about which of these three insurance companies you should go with, I want to talk about two different types of insurance that you can get for your van and why I think one is better than the other. And those are your standard auto insurance with an attached personal articles policy or a separate RV or motorhome insurance. For an auto insurance policy for camper vans, I don't really recommend going this route unless it's your only option. And it might be your only option if you have a more simple and smaller build that's not going to qualify for an RV or motorhome insurance. So to qualify for RV insurance, the requirements can change depending upon which insurance company you go with, but typically you're going to need one of the following things being either a fixed fridge, a fixed sink, or a fixed cooktop, or a fixed toilet or bathroom. Typically, if you have at least one of those things, or you're able to get your vehicle retitled as an RV, then you'll be able to qualify for RV insurance. But if not, then you're probably going to need to get just a regular auto insurance, but that's just going to cover the actual van or the vehicle itself. It won't cover any of the build out that you've done in the back. But if you have a pretty simple build out, then it might not be as big of an issue for you, though I do still recommend getting a separate personal articles policy along with it. So that's going to protect you against theft in case somebody steals stuff in the back of your van. So if somebody breaks in and takes your laptop or your computer, then you're going to be covered for those things. And the best way to get this kind of insurance policy, I would just recommend talking to your local Progressive or State Farm agent and seeing what they have to say and what they can do for you as far as like bundling auto and personal articles. Now, if you have a more expensive or fancy build out, kind of like I have here in my van, then I would definitely recommend going with an RV or motorhome insurance. RV insurance is typically going to be cheaper than if you tried to insure your whole van with an auto policy, and you're going to get more comprehensive coverage. You're going to get liability included, so if you're in an accident, then you get liability coverage. And with the RV or motorhome policy, it's going to cover the actual vehicle in case of an accident, as well as the whole build out here as well. So you can include your cost for building materials and your cost for labor. So it's not just taking into account the shell of the van itself and forgetting about all the work and cool stuff you put into the back of your van. It's actually more representative of what you would be able to get if you sold it on the market. A lot of times with an RV insurance policy, personal articles is also included up to a certain amount. And so that means things like laptops, cameras, outdoors gear, camping gear. If somebody breaks into your van and steals some of that, you'll be covered up to a certain amount. So just check the policy to make sure. One thing I want to make sure that you're aware of though, when you start talking to these companies about getting RV insurance, is make sure that you're actually getting RV insurance and not an auto policy. When I first insured my van, I went to my local rep and asked them to insure it as an RV, but it wasn't until I got into that accident that I realized it wasn't actually insured as an RV. It was insured as an automobile with a separate personal articles policy to cover stuff in the back of the van, which could have been really bad had the accident damaged anything in the back of the van here, because it would not have been covered. Thankfully, it was just the driver's side door and actual vehicles that needed to get fixed, so none of my hard work was actually damaged. But that would have been devastating if I'd realized that none of the stuff back here was covered in that accident. So after that, I made sure to get it specifically switched from that auto policy to a specific RV policy, and my premiums also dropped like crazy. So I was paying like $220 a month, and it dropped to like $60 a month. Or really better coverage, because now it was covering everything in the back of the van too. That's why now I recommend Roamly first, because they are strictly an RV, camper van insurance company. So that means you're not going to get accidentally assigned an auto policy when you know it should be an RV, because this is what they do day in and day out. They only do campervan on RV insurances, so they're not going to accidentally write you an auto policy when it should be an RV policy. Also, since they exclusively work with RVs and vans and stuff like that, this is not anything new to them. Whereas if you call in your local Progressive or your State Farm rep, this might be the first van that they see, or they'll only write a couple of policies for vans and RVs a month, whereas Roamly's writing these kinds of policies every single day. So they know exactly what to expect and what to insure, and they've seen everything that comes in this industry. It's a little bit like that quote from Bruce Lee, which is, what is it? It's like, I don't fear the man who's practiced 10,000 kicks, but one kick 10,000 times. So a little cheesy, but Roamly, it's like, they're only doing campervan and RV insurance, so they're in the industry and that's all they do, so that's what they know. And so I don't know about you, but I'd rather have somebody who's the expert and that's the only type of policy they write be writing my policy too. There's a whole bunch of factors that go into how much your monthly payment is going to be for your policy and what you want covered, because there is still a lot of customization that comes within these camper vans and things like, are you full-time, are you part-time, what kind of van do you have, what state do you live in, do you have an address? That kind of thing is going to affect your premiums and your policy. But you can get a free quote from them within a couple of minutes on their website. Just fill in the information for your van or your RV, and then they'll get back to you within a few minutes of what you can expect to pay. There are some specific cases where if you have, say, like a DIY build and you're registered in a certain state, Roamly might not have underwriting for that state yet, since it's still a pretty new company. But they are partnered with Progressive and a few other more traditional insurance agencies as well. So if they can't directly insure you themselves, they'll help you get a policy with another agency, and they'll be sure you're getting the right coverage for an actual van and RV. If for whatever reason Roamly or one of their partners isn't able to insure you in your van, then I would go and talk to a local State Farm rep, because I do have a couple friends who weren't eligible for a certain Roamly policy, at least a couple of months ago they weren't, and they were able to get insured for an RV policy through State Farm. So just make sure that you are very clear and very explicit that you want a motorhome or an RV policy and not an auto policy. And I shouldn't have to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. The biggest thing with all of this is don't lie to your insurance company, because the last thing that you want is, you said you had a shower or a fridge in your van to qualify it as an RV, but you don't have one of those permanently, and then you get in an accident and the insurance company finds out when they do all of their investigations into what happened into the accident, and they see your van and they see, oh, this doesn't meet the qualifications we signed you up under the policy for, and then you get your claim denied, and then you're stuck footing the bill for the entire accident and whatever else went wrong. So don't lie to your insurance company. It's just going to cause you more headaches and more problems later on. So your next step would be to get a quote from the Roamly website for free. I'll just put a link in the description so you can go right there. And then you're just going to put in your information on that website, and then you're either going to get an auto-calculated quote, or you're going to have somebody calling you back within a few minutes with your quote and discussing what your coverage you want on your van. Super easy, only takes a few minutes, and is my current recommendation for anybody getting into the van life or building out a camper van on how to insure their vans right now. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments.